The air inside the Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner smelled of new leather and possibility. Dr. Olivia Harper took a deep breath as she stepped through the aircraft door, inhaling the scent that now belonged to her. 48 years old, with her silver-streaked natural hair pulled back in a simple bun, and wearing a navy blazer, Olivia bore no resemblance to the CEO who had transferred $3.8 billion to purchase Horizon Elite Airways. She wasn't wearing designer labels, and apart from her late mother's simple gold watch, she had no expensive jewelry. To the casual observer, she might have looked like a mid-level executive flying to London for a conference or a teacher heading off on a modest vacation. But nothing was as it seemed. The flight attendant looked at Olivia's boarding pass and said a sincere welcome aboard. This young woman was named Emily Chen. She showed Olivia to seat 1A, saying, "Your seat is over here, please." What happened next would be shocking. Olivia smiled. "Thank you, Emily," she said. The first-class cabin had everything the brochures promised. 8 luxurious suites in a 1-to-1 configuration, each with sliding doors for privacy, seats that reclined into cream-colored leather beds, and ambient lighting that shifted between soothing blues and purples. Seat 1A was the most valuable seat. Olivia sat down in her seat and pulled out a worn leather notebook. To onlookers, it looked like a personal diary. In reality, it was her audit log, a document where she recorded every observation, every interaction, every malfunction in the system she currently owned. Do you think what Olivia is doing is right? The reason she bought Horizon Elite Airways wasn't because she wanted to enter the aviation industry, but because the previous management had run the company into the ground through negligence and arrogance. Customer satisfaction scores had plummeted. Employee morale was at an all-time low, and worst of all, discrimination complaints had tripled in the last 2 years. The truth was, Olivia wanted to change things. This system couldn't continue like this. Olivia had built her fortune by fixing broken systems. Her company, Harper Global Solutions, specialized in corporate turnarounds. She had rescued manufacturing plants, retail chains, and tech startups. Now she was going to rescue an airline. But first, she had to fly herself and identify the problem in the system. Emily appeared with a tray. "May I offer you something before takeoff?" she asked. "Sparkling water, juice, coffee?" she added. Olivia replied, "Sparkling water would be great, thank you." As Emily walked away, Olivia opened her notebook and wrote, "Flight HE707, JFK to LHR. Crew member Emily Chen, professional, warm, attentive." A good start. Halfway through her second observation, a shadow fell over her seat. Olivia looked up and saw a man standing in the aisle. He was tall, with silver hair, and 4 gold stripes gleaming on his uniform epaulets. His name tag read Captain R. Morrison. Captain Morrison said, "Excuse me," but his tone indicated he wasn't asking for permission. "May I see your boarding pass?" he asked. Olivia reached into her bag and handed him the card without saying a word. Morrison squinted at the card, then tapped something on the tablet he was carrying. His brow furrowed further. "There must be an error in the system," he said. Olivia asked in a calm tone, "Is there a problem, Captain?" Morrison didn't answer right away, busy examining Olivia. He scrutinized her clothes. Olivia seemed to be reading the captain's thoughts. "What do you think the captain thought of Olivia? What would you think if you were in the captain's place?" Morrison finally pointed to 1A and said, "This seat is reserved for our highest-level passengers, Diamond Elite members, VIPs, and guests of senior management." Olivia calmly asked again, "I purchased a full-fare first-class ticket. Is there a specific policy restricting seat 1A?" Morrison's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I don't know how the system assigned you this seat, but I have to seat a priority passenger. I have a personal acquaintance who specifically requested this seat," he said. Olivia tilted her head slightly. "And does this priority passenger have a confirmed reservation for seat 1A?" she continued. Morrison said in a sharp tone, "They have a confirmed reservation for first class. Specific seat assignments are at my discretion as the captain of this aircraft." Olivia closed her notebook, placed her hands on the armrest and said, "I understand." She gave the captain a clear answer. "Captain Morrison, I'm already seated. I've taken out my belongings. And as you mentioned, I have a confirmed seat assignment. Unless there is a legitimate security concern, I prefer to remain where I am." Morrison's face flushed slightly. Leaning forward, he spoke in what he probably thought was a reasonable tone, but which came across as condescending. "Let me be frank with you. This cabin is designed for a specific type of passenger. Business travelers, executives, people who regularly fly first class. You seem more comfortable in premium economy. It's a very nice, very spacious cabin," he said. "Captain," Olivia interrupted, her voice still calm but with a definite edge. "Are you implying that I don't belong in first class based on my appearance?" she asked. Olivia actually understood the captain's intention, but was pushing him further. She just wanted to see how far he would go. Morrison stiffened, realizing he was entering dangerous territory. But instead of backing down, he became even more aggressive. I'm implying a system error. This seat is for those who pay for the plane, not those who work on it, he said, speaking even more condescendingly. The captain's words were like a slap in the face. Olivia felt a familiar anger rising in her chest. It wasn't from surprise, because she had experienced various forms of this prejudice throughout her life, but it was a cold anger directed at the callous indifference of this prejudice. This man had looked at her, made assumptions based on her race and appearance, and decided she was some kind of airline employee who had cheated her way into a premium seat. Don't you think he went too far? It's really unbelievable, Olivia said quietly. I don't understand. Morrison realized his mistake a little too late. His eyes widened slightly, and he tried to backtrack. What I meant was, look ma'am, I'm just trying to run an efficient operation here. In 3 minutes, a passenger who particularly needs this seat will board. I kindly request that you move to seat 38F. It's a window seat, very private. Seat 38F, Olivia repeated. That's the last row of the plane. Next to the toilets, she said, indicating her displeasure. Olivia opened her notebook again and wrote a note. Captain Richard Morrison. Attempted to remove passenger from assigned seat. Discriminatory language. People who work on the plane. Suggested moving to seat 38F. Morrison saw what she had written, and his expression hardened. What are you doing? He asked sharply. Taking notes, Olivia replied simply. Morrison asked again. For what purpose? When she replied, personal documentation, Morrison's hand moved to take the notebook, then stopped. Despite his arrogance, he seemed to realize this would be crossing the line. Instead, he stood up straight, using his full height, and asserted his authority. Ma'am, I am the captain of this aircraft. According to FAA regulations, I have ultimate authority over all passengers and crew. If I determine that your presence in this seat is hindering the safe conduct of the flight, I have the authority to remove you from the aircraft entirely, he stated sternly. Are you threatening to remove me from the aircraft because I'm sitting in the seat assigned to me? Olivia asked. I'm stating the facts, Morrison said. You have 2 options. Voluntarily move to seat 38F or be removed from the aircraft by security personnel for failing to comply with crew instructions. The choice is yours. Before Olivia could respond, Emily appeared, her face pale. Captain Morrison, it's me, she said. Morrison looked away and said sharply, Not now, Emily, he added. I'm dealing with a passenger issue. Emily hesitated, clearly wanting to speak but afraid of the consequences. Olivia looked into her eyes and gave a small, reassuring nod. Don't risk your job for me. Not yet. I really wonder, if you were in Emily's place, would you intervene immediately, or would you prefer to sit quietly? Morrison was still standing over his seat, waiting for obedience. Olivia studied the man who thought his authority made him untouchable. She considered explaining who she was and putting an end to this humiliation. But if she did, she would see how Morrison's boss treated him. She wouldn't see how he treated passengers he perceived as weak. Instead, she stood up. Fine, Olivia said quietly. I'll move. Morrison's smile was triumphant and ugly. An excellent decision. Emily will help you with your belongings, he declared his victory. As Olivia gathered her bag and notebook, Morrison called out to the cabin. Mr. Bradford, your seat is ready, sir. You may come in. A man entered the first-class cabin. According to Olivia's mental database, Kenneth Bradford, Olivia had reviewed the passenger list that morning. Bradford was a real estate agent known for his aggressive business tactics and even more aggressive personality. Also, apparently, he was Morrison's golf buddy. Derek, Bradford called out, using Morrison's first name in a friendly old friend kind of way. Did you sort out the seat thing? He asked. Morrison nodded. Everything's taken care of. Seat 1A is yours. Bradford glanced at Olivia standing in the aisle with her bag. He didn't say anything to her, didn't acknowledge her as a person. Olivia was an obstacle in his way. As Emily led Olivia toward the back of the plane, Olivia passed through business class, premium economy, and regular economy, making her way to row 38, the last row, the row where the seats couldn't be reclined because they were next to the galley wall, the least desirable seats on the plane due to the constant noise and smell from the toilets. As Olivia settled into 38F, Emily said, I'm so sorry. Captain Morrison said he sometimes does this. How often does this happen? Olivia asked. Emily glanced tensely toward the front of the cabin. I shouldn't say, but this isn't the first time, she replied. Olivia wrote another note in her notebook. Then she took out her phone and sent a message to Marcus Webb, the lawyer currently waiting for her arrival in London. We are experiencing a significant service disruption on flight HE 707. Document everything. Have a full legal team ready at Heathrow after landing. Prepare the necessary documents to terminate Captain Richard Morrison. Also prepare a criminal case for discrimination and abuse of authority. She sent the message as the cabin door closed and the engine started. Morrison's voice came over the intercom, soft and confident. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Horizon Elite Airways Flight 707 to London Heathrow. We will be taking off in a few minutes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. Olivia sat in seat 38F, the chemical smell of the toilet reaching her nose every few minutes, and smiled coldly. Enjoy it, Captain Morrison, she thought, because when we land, your whole world will come crashing down. At 37,000 feet, the Boeing 787 sliced through the atmosphere almost silently. The cabin was darkened for the transatlantic flight, and most passengers had settled into their seats for the 7-hour journey to London. But in seat 38F, Dr. Olivia Harper was awake, observing everything. From her seat in the last row, she had a unique vantage point. She could see the entire economy class, watch the flight attendants move down the aisles, and most importantly, hear the gossip shared by the crew when they thought no one important was listening. It was incredible. Emily and another young flight attendant named Lisa Rodriguez were working in the rear galley, just a few meters away from Olivia's seat. "Did you see what Morrison did?" whispered Lisa, her voice audible through the thin curtain separating the galley from the cabin. "He just kicked the woman out of 1A because Ken Bradford wanted her there," she added. After hearing this, Olivia now understood everything more clearly. "The Morrison special," Emily said bitterly. "I hate it. That passenger paid full price for that seat. She has a right to be there," she added. "But she doesn't fit the profile," Lisa said. "You know how he is. If you're not wearing a Rolex and designer clothes, he assumes you don't belong there." Olivia took another note. "The crew is aware of Morrison's behavior pattern. Multiple incidents. The term used, the Morrison special." Emily continued, her voice filled with disappointment. "I wanted to say something," she continued, "but you know what happened to Jessica last year when she objected to him changing seats, implying the pressure felt by the crew. They reported her for insubordination," said Lisa. "She got a 2-week suspension without pay. She almost lost her apartment." "Exactly, and management backed him because he's their golden boy. 22 years, spotless safety record, never late. They don't care that he's a bully." Olivia's jaw tightened. This was worse than she'd imagined. Morrison wasn't just a bad actor. He was a bad actor protected by a system that valued his flight record over his character. The beverage service began. Emily pulled up to Olivia's row in a cart, an apologetic look on her face. "Can I get you anything? Water? Juice? Coffee?" she asked. "Water, please. Thank you," Olivia said. Then, lowering her voice, "Emily, thank you for trying to help me earlier. I know you're in a tough spot." She was actually trying to reassure Emily. Emily's eyes welled up slightly. What he did wasn't right. "But if I had spoken up, he would have punished me, or worse. I have student loans. I need this job," she said. Olivia gently said, "I understand. Can I ask you something? Off the record?" Emily looked toward the front of the cabin, then nodded. "How many times have you seen Captain Morrison kick passengers out of the premium seats?" Emily hesitated, then whispered, "As far as I know, at least 12 times last year. Always the same way. People who don't look like they belong there, usually women, usually people of color. He moves them for his friends or VIPs. Management calls it operational flexibility. We call it what it really is." Olivia asked, "And no one has reported this?" Emily replied, "People try, but Morrison has friends in high places. Complaints disappear, and crew members who push too hard find themselves on the worst routes or mysteriously fail their recertification exams." Olivia took more notes. Then she pulled out a business card. Not a CEO card, just a plain card with her name and phone number. "Emily, if anything happens to you because of what happened today, if Morrison retaliates in any way, I want you to call this number. Can you do that?" she asked again. Emily took the card, looking confused. "Who are you?" "Someone who will make this end," Olivia said. "That's all you need to know for now." During the second hour of the flight, the first real incident occurred. A middle-aged woman traveling with a young man in row 24 pressed the call button. Lisa answered, and Olivia monitored the interaction. "My daughter has diabetes," the woman explained in an anxious voice. "Her blood sugar is dropping. Do you have any juice? Meal service hasn't started yet." "Of course," Lisa said immediately. "I'll get her some orange juice." But before Lisa could act, Morrison's voice crackled over the crew intercom. "No, Lisa. Juice is only for first-class service. Our supplies are running low. Give her water," he said. Lisa's face paled. She looked at the visibly trembling young woman, then at the intercom. "Captain, this is a medical situation. The passenger is diabetic, and I heard you the first time," Morrison interrupted. "Water and crackers. We have to preserve our first-class services," he said, making it clear he didn't care about the diabetic passenger. Lisa seemed to want to argue, but years of conditioning forced her to comply. "I'll get you water and crackers," she told the mother, her voice tense. But Emily, watching from the galley, made a decision. She took a bottle of orange juice from the first-class cart and brought it to the diabetic young man. Emily quietly said, "Here, drink this." The young woman's mother looked relieved, as if she might cry. Thank you so much," she replied. 5 minutes later, Olivia saw Morrison come out of the cockpit to stretch his legs. He spotted Emily in economy class and narrowed his eyes at her. "Emily," Morrison called out. Emily went over to Morrison, who was standing near the galley where Olivia could hear every word. Morrison asked, "Did you give a first-class fruit juice to an economy-class passenger?" "Yes, Captain. He was diabetic and experiencing hypoglycemia. It was medically necessary." "I specifically told you to use water and crackers," the captain continued. "With all due respect, Captain, that wouldn't have been sufficient for her condition. Medical emergencies take precedence over cabin service protocols." Morrison's face flushed. "Don't quote regulations to me. I was flying before you were born. When I give an order, you follow it. Period," he said, taking an overly harsh stance. "Even if it puts a passenger's health at risk?" Emily asked, her voice trembling but determined. Morrison approached, invading her personal space. "You've just earned yourself a report. Insubordination. Failure to comply with crew instructions. I'll report this to HR the moment we land," he threatened Emily. Emily began. "Captain Morrison," she wanted to explain. "But get back to your station," Morrison shouted. "And if you give another first-class product without my explicit permission, you'll start looking for a new job." He walked toward the cockpit, leaving Emily in the galley, tears streaming down her face. Olivia had seen enough. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. Lisa, seeing Olivia in the aisle, said, "Ma'am, please sit down. I need to use the restroom," Olivia said, which was technically true. It was right next to her. But instead of going in, she stopped where Emily was standing. Olivia asked quietly, "Are you okay?" Emily wiped her eyes. "I'm fine. I did the right thing, didn't I? That girl needed help." "You absolutely did the right thing," Olivia said firmly. "What Captain Morrison did was wrong. Prioritizing the beverage inventory over a medical emergency is not only cruel, it's potentially criminal negligence," Emily said sadly. "It doesn't matter. He'll write that report. It'll go on his permanent record. I'll never get promoted now." Olivia placed her hand on Emily's shoulder. "Listen to me very carefully. That report will never be written, and Captain Morrison will never threaten you again. I promise you," she said, trying to reassure Emily. "How is that possible?" Emily asked. "Trust me," Olivia interrupted. "Just trust me." She returned to her seat and took detailed notes. Second incident. Denial of medical assistance to prioritize first-class service. Threatening a crew member with disciplinary action for providing emergency medical assistance. Turbulence began during the third hour of the flight. It wasn't severe, just moderate shaking. The seatbelt sign lit up and the flight attendants sat down in their jump seats. However, Morrison gave a different message to the cabin over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing significant turbulence. All passengers must remain seated with their seatbelts fastened. This also applies to going to the toilet. The seatbelt sign will remain lit until it is determined that it is safe." 30 minutes later, the air was completely calm. The wings were steady. There was not the slightest sign of turbulence. However, the seatbelt sign remained lit. Olivia checked the aviation weather app on her phone. She had specifically paid for in-flight Wi-Fi for this purpose. The radar showed clear skies ahead. There was no meteorological reason for passengers to remain in their seats. In the galley, she heard Lisa whisper to Emily, "The air has been calm for 20 minutes. Why hasn't he turned off the sign?" "Because Ken Bradford is sleeping in 1A, whispered Emily. "Morrison keeps the sign on even when the air is calm so his VIP friends can sleep without being disturbed by footsteps." Unbelievable, isn't it? Imagine how you would feel if you witnessed something like that. Olivia wrote another note. Misuse of safety protocols for passenger comfort. Misuse of the seatbelt light. 45 minutes passed. Passengers began to get restless. A man in row 20 stood up, clearly impatient to go to the bathroom. "Sir, please sit down," Lisa called out. "The seatbelt sign is on. I've been holding it for an hour," the man said. "The flight is calm. Could you ask the captain to turn off the sign?" he asked pointedly. Before Lisa could respond, Morrison's voice echoed from the front of the cabin. He had come out of the cockpit again. "The sign is on because I said so," Morrison announced loudly enough for half the cabin to hear. "If you can't follow simple instructions, the authorities will meet you at the gate." He dared to threaten the passengers again. The man sat down, humiliated. However, a female lawyer sitting in row 32 stood up. The woman was white, elegantly dressed, and clearly unfazed. "Captain, with all due respect, the air has been completely still for nearly an hour. Is there a specific security issue? Or are you keeping the light on for some other reason?" she asked. Morrison's face darkened. "Ma'am, I don't have to explain my decisions to you. The seatbelt sign will remain lit until I determine it is safe, he replied to the lawyer's question. The woman calmly said, according to FAA regulations, passengers have the right to know if there is a real safety issue. If the light is being used arbitrarily, she continued. Are you a pilot? Morrison interrupted. No, but I'm a lawyer specializing in aviation law. And I wanted to continue, but... Then sit down and be quiet, Morrison shouted, before I start listing you as a disruptive passenger. The lawyer sat down but took out his phone and began typing furiously, probably filing a complaint, Olivia thought. Olivia watched silently, but this was too much. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. When Morrison noticed her, he called out, "Ma'am, please sit down immediately." Olivia walked slowly, deliberately toward him. Captain Morrison, I'd like to ask you the same question the lawyer just asked. Is there a real safety issue that requires the seatbelt sign to remain on, or is this an arbitrary decision? Morrison's eyes widened when he recognized her. This was the woman he had kicked out of first class. You, he said, I should have known you'd cause trouble. Get back to your seat immediately, or I'll have you restrained, he threatened again. I'm just asking a question that every passenger has a right to ask, Olivia said calmly. Is there turbulence ahead? Is there a mechanical problem? Or are you keeping passengers in their seats for your own comfort? Morrison's face turned bright red. He closed the distance between them with 3 angry steps and invaded Olivia's personal space. Pointing his finger at Olivia's face, he shouted, Listen to me. I don't know who you think you are, but on this plane I am God. My word is law, and if you don't sit down immediately, I will handcuff you for the rest of the flight. Listen to me, he hissed, pointing his finger at Olivia's face. I don't know who you think you are, but on this plane I am God. My word is law, and if you don't sit down immediately, I will handcuff you for the rest of the flight. Olivia looked at the finger inches from her face, then at Morrison's angry eyes. She didn't even blink. She didn't back down. She just took out her phone and snapped a photo. What are you doing? Morrison asked. I'm documenting the threat to handcuff a passenger for asking a security question, Olivia said. I'm sure the FAA will be very interested in this incident. Morrison's hand shot out, trying to grab the phone. This was a terrible mistake. Olivia gently pulled the phone back. Captain Morrison, if you touch me or my belongings, that is assault, and we are on a plane, which makes it a federal offense. I strongly advise you to remove your hand, she said, actually knowing how to defend herself. For a moment, Morrison really looked like he was about to do something stupid. Then, realizing it was impossible to justify taking a passenger's phone, he lowered his hand. Fine, he said. You want to play lawyer? When we land in London, the police will be waiting for you. I will report that you were aggressive, refused the crew's instructions, and threatened the safety of this flight. You will be banned from Horizon Elite for life. You will never fly with this airline again. Olivia smiled. Captain Morrison, she said quietly, I can guarantee the police will be involved when we land in London. But not for me, she said, turning around and walking back to her seat, 38F, while Morrison stood in the aisle, stunned and angry. Once seated, Olivia sent another message to Marcus. Add assault to the complaint. Have airport police ready. This ends today. The reply came immediately. Everything is ready. Legal team, police and board are waiting at Heathrow. Enjoy the landing. Olivia looked out the window at the clouds below. They would touch down in less than 2 hours. And Captain Richard Morrison's career would come to an end. The last 2 hours of flight, each A707 passed in tense silence. Captain Morrison had retreated to the cockpit, but not before making one more announcement, barely concealing the threats it contained. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be landing at London Heathrow in approximately 90 minutes. Due to the security situation on board, I have requested airport authorities to meet the aircraft. Please remain in your seats until the situation is resolved after landing, he said. Do you think the captain was trying to cover himself with this announcement? The cabin stirred with anxious murmurs. The eyes of a few people who had witnessed the argument between Morrison and Olivia fixed on Olivia. The lawyer in row 32 leaned over from the aisle and whispered to Olivia, This is retaliation. He's trying to intimidate you. I know, Olivia replied. He's not the first person to underestimate me. He probably won't be the last either. The lawyer held up his phone and said, I recorded everything. If you need it for a complaint, I'll gladly provide it. Olivia responded with a warm smile. What's your name? She asked. The answer came immediately. Rebecca Chen, aviation lawyer based in New York. Olivia turned to Rebecca and said, Rebecca, I feel like we're going to be very good friends. Keep that video. You may be called as a witness. Rebecca raised her eyebrows. Are you really going to sue? She asked. Oh, it will be much more than that, Olivia said mysteriously. In the kitchen, Emily and Lisa were preparing for the landing, but their conversation had a worried tone. Do you think Morrison really reported that woman to the police? Whispered Lisa. Absolutely, said Emily. He's done it before. Remember the professor who complained to him about delays last year? Morrison detained him at customs for 3 hours, but that woman didn't do anything wrong. She just asked a question. That doesn't matter to Morrison. He sees any challenge to his authority as a threat. Emily looked toward the back where Olivia was sitting. I feel terrible. She's going to be arrested for standing up for what's right, she said. Maybe we should say something, Lisa suggested. She actually wanted to reassure herself that we could tell the police what really happened. Emily shook her head. And what should we do? Get blacklisted like Jessica, she said. Then she added, I want to help, but I have to think about my career. Hearing every word, Olivia wrote one last note in her notebook. Flight attendants are aware of Morrison's habit of retaliating against passengers. Fear prevents them from speaking up. The system is completely broken. As the plane descended toward Heathrow, Olivia took out her phone one last time before switching to airplane mode. She opened her email and reviewed the document Marcus had sent, the final purchase documents for Horizon Elite Airways. At 9:17 that morning, Olivia had become the majority shareholder of the airline. The transaction had been carefully structured. A quick purchase had been made through the holding company Harper Global Solutions, giving Olivia immediate operational control, while the board of directors remained in place temporarily for regulatory continuity. Olivia looked at the signature line on the document. Her name was written in elegant handwriting, Dr. Olivia Harper, CEO and majority shareholder of Horizon Elite Airways. She smiled and picked up her phone. The landing was smooth. Morrison was an excellent pilot, she had to admit. He had technical skills, but his people skills were catastrophically lacking. But no matter what, he had to pay the price. As the plane pulled up to the gate, passengers began gathering their belongings, despite Morrison's instruction to remain in their seats. Olivia could see the welcoming committee from the window. 3 flashing Metropolitan police cars, 2 black SUVs she recognized as her own security team, and a group of people in business attire who could only be the legal team. Morrison's voice came over the intercom one last time, triumphant and smug. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain in your seats. Airport police will be boarding the plane to deal with a passenger incident. This will only take a few minutes. The plane door opened. Olivia watched as 2 uniformed Metropolitan police officers boarded the plane, followed by her lawyer, Marcus Webb. Marcus was a distinguished black man in his 60s, wearing an impeccable Savile Row suit. Behind Marcus were 3 more people, Detective Inspector Sarah Coleman from the Met's Aviation Crimes Unit, and 2 executives from Horizon Elite's London office. These 2 executives seemed completely baffled as to why they had been summoned to the airport an hour earlier. Morrison stepped out of the cockpit, adjusted his uniform jacket and put on his captain's hat. With the confidence of a man who believed the system would always protect him, he walked toward the police. But he had no idea what was about to happen, and slowly, he was about to learn that shocking truth. Morrison said, "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly." He extended his hand and wanted to shake theirs. "I'm Captain Richard Morrison. There's a passenger in the back of the plane who has been disruptive and combative throughout the flight and refuses to comply with safety instructions. Please deal with him." Detective Inspector Coleman did not shake his hand. He looked at Marcus Webb behind him. "Mr. Webb, would you take the lead?" he asked. Morrison's confidence faltered slightly. "Excuse me, who are you?" he said. "Marcus Webb, General Counsel for Horizon Elite Airways," said Marcus. "Captain Morrison, we need to speak with one of your passengers. Dr. Olivia Harper, seated in seat 38F. "That's her," Morrison said quickly, pointing to the back. "She's the one I was looking for. I want her removed from the plane and charged," he continued. Marcus cut him off coldly. "Captain, I suggest you stop talking. Immediately." Something in Marcus's tone made Morrison pause. The managers from the London office looked at each other tensely, clearly sensing that something was very wrong but not understanding what. They looked around in bewilderment, trying to make sense of what was happening. The entire group walked down the corridor toward Olivia's seat. All the passengers turned to look. Emily and Lisa stood frozen by the kitchen, their faces pale with worry. When they reached row 38, Olivia was sitting calmly, her notebook closed, her bag already packed. She looked at Marcus and smiled. "Marcus, you're right on time as usual," she said. Marcus bowed his head respectfully. "Dr. Harper," he said, "welcome to London. I hope the flight was educational." "It was very educational," said Olivia, standing up. She was a few inches shorter than everyone around her, but somehow she seemed to fill the entire space. Morrison was still confused, but his pride wouldn't allow him to remain silent. "Officers, arrest this woman. She threatened me, refused security instructions," and as she continued, "Captain Morrison," said Detective Inspector Coleman, taking out his notebook, "I need to clarify something before you continue. You reported a disruptive passenger. Can you describe in detail this passenger's actions that posed a security threat?" "He unbuckled his seatbelt when the sign was on," said Morrison. "He confronted me in the aisle. He made up lies like he took pictures without permission." Rebecca Chen, standing up from row 32 with her phone in hand, shouted, He asked you a security question. I recorded the entire conversation. He asked if there was a legitimate security reason for the seatbelt sign to remain lit when the air was calm. Captain Morrison responded by threatening to have her restrained. She said, "Who are you?" Morrison asked. "Rebecca Chen, aviation lawyer. And I will present my video evidence, along with witness statements to these officers that you violated safety protocols and retaliated against passengers," she replied. Morrison's face flushed, then drained. "This is nonsense. I'm the captain. It's my prerogative to maintain order on my aircraft," he said, essentially trying to shield himself. Olivia stepped forward and repeated, "Your aircraft." Then she asked, "Captain Morrison, what makes you think this is your aircraft?" "Your plane," Olivia repeated quietly. She took a step forward. "Captain Morrison, what makes you think this is your plane?" Morrison laughed sarcastically. "I've been flying for Horizon Elite for 22 years. I know this airline inside and out, and I know that we passengers, 22 years of service," Olivia interrupted. "And in those 22 years, how many passengers have you removed from premium seats based on your personal judgment of whether they belong there?" she said. Morrison's mouth opened and closed. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied. Olivia turned to Emily. "Emily Chen, this flight attendant on this crew, correct?" Emily looked scared, but nodded. "Yes, ma'am," she replied fearfully. "How many times did you see Captain Morrison remove passengers from first-class seats to accommodate his personal friends?" she asked. Emily stammered, looking at Morrison, and continued, I can't." Olivia said gently, "I promise you won't be punished for telling the truth. Just answer the question." Emily took a shaky breath. "I personally witnessed it at least 12 times last year. He calls it Morrison Special. He removes passengers he deems unfit for first class and gives their seats to VIPs or his friends." Morrison turned to Emily. "You're fired. Effective immediately. I'll make sure you never work for another airline." "Captain Morrison," Marcus said, his voice as sharp as a knife, "you have no authority to fire anyone. In fact, as of this moment, you have no authority to do anything on behalf of Horizon Elite Airways." "What are you talking about?" Morrison asked. "I'm the senior captain of this fleet. I report directly to the chief of operations. I don't take orders from company lawyers." Marcus pulled out a tablet and showed Morrison the screen. At 9:17 a.m. today, Horizon Elite Airways was acquired by Harper Global Solutions in a $3.8 billion transaction. The sale was approved by all regulatory authorities and is now complete. Morrison watched the screen, clearly not grasping the significance. "So what? There have been ownership changes before. This doesn't affect our authority. When the new owner is standing right in front of you, it does affect your authority," Olivia said. The cabin fell completely silent. Morrison looked at Olivia, then at Marcus, then back at Olivia. "What?" "Captain Morrison," Olivia said, her voice calm and firm. "My name is Dr. Olivia Harper. I am the founder and CEO of Harper Global Solutions. As of this morning, I am the owner of Horizon Elite Airways. I own this plane. I own every seat on this plane, including seat 1A, from which you removed me because you thought I was airline staff who somehow managed to get into first class." Morrison's face went completely pale. Passengers in the cabin pulled out their phones and began recording the moment. "I booked this flight under my own name," Olivia continued. "I purchased a full-fare first-class ticket. I specifically requested seat 1A because I wanted to experience the flagship service of the airline I just acquired. Instead, I encountered discrimination, abuse of authority, and a culture of systematic retaliation that you have personally cultivated for over 20 years. Morrison was trembling. "I didn't know. If I had known it was you, you would have treated me with respect," Olivia finished. "But that's precisely the problem, Captain. You only treat people with respect when you think they have power. You judged me by my appearance and decided I didn't deserve basic courtesy. You sent me to the worst seat on the plane. You threatened to have me arrested for asking a security question. And when I documented your behavior, you tried to take my phone." She turned to Detective Inspector Coleman. "Detective, I'm formally filing charges against Captain Morrison for discrimination, abuse of authority, misuse of security protocols, and attempted assault. I have written documentation, photographic evidence, and numerous witnesses." "I'll take your statement," Coleman said, taking notes. Olivia turned to the managers of the London office. "You are James Peterson and Linda Shaw, the general managers of UK operations, correct?" They nodded nervously. "I want Captain Morrison's security clearance revoked immediately. He will be banned from all Horizon Elite facilities. First Officer Davis will command the return flight. Captain Morrison will return home on his own." "Dr. Harper," James stammered. "With all due respect, Captain Morrison is with us." By allowing toxic behavior for 22 years, Olivia cut him off. "That ends today. Is that clear?" "Yes, ma'am," they said in unison. Morrison was trembling, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. "You can't do this. I have a contract. I have rights. The union—" "Your contract has a just cause termination clause," Marcus said, pulling out another document. "Discrimination, abuse of authority, and misuse of safety equipment fall under that clause. Your severance pay is void. You walk away with nothing. Morrison looked around helplessly for support. He looked at the other passengers, but saw only disgust. He looked at Kenneth Bradford in seat 1A, but Bradford had already turned away, pretending not to recognize him. "Please," Morrison whispered. "I have a mortgage to pay. I have children in college. This is my whole life." Olivia felt no satisfaction at his helplessness, only a cold determination that this had to end. "Captain Morrison, you had every opportunity to be a good man. Instead, you chose arrogance and tyranny. This is the result." She ripped the wings off the captain's uniform jacket, a symbolic gesture with devastating weight. "You are relieved of command." Detective Inspector Coleman stepped forward with handcuffs. "Captain Richard Morrison, I'm arresting you on suspicion of discrimination and assault. You have the right to remain silent." As the police led Morrison off the plane in handcuffs, the cabin erupted. Some passengers applauded. Rebecca Chen recorded everything on her phone. The aviation lawyer had witnessed the most dramatic in-flight justice event she had ever seen. Olivia turned to Emily, who was quietly crying in the galley. "Emily Chen, you showed courage today. You helped a diabetic passenger despite Morrison's orders. You spoke up at a crucial moment. I'm promoting you to senior flight attendant effective immediately with a 40% pay raise. You'll also join the committee redesigning our training protocols." Emily began to sob uncontrollably. Thank you so much." Olivia addressed the entire cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for my former employee's behavior. All passengers on this flight will receive 2 complimentary round-trip tickets to any destination served by Horizon Elite and a full refund. Furthermore, I am implementing urgent policy changes to ensure this never happens again." The applause was thunderous. When Olivia finally disembarked, not through the back door in shame, but through the front door in triumph, she stood at seat 1A, where Kenneth Bradford was trying to be invisible. "Bradford," she said quietly, "you knew exactly what you were doing when Captain Morrison gave you my seat. You were complicit in discrimination. You are permanently banned from Horizon Elite Airways." Bradford stammered, but Olivia was already gone, walking down the jet bridge to begin rebuilding the airline she had saved. Behind her, Captain Morrison sat in a police car, watching his entire world collapse through the window. He had judged the book by its cover, and the book had been the end of his story. 3 months after the HE-707 flight landed at Heathrow, Richard Morrison sat in a cramped one-bedroom flat in Croydon, staring at his laptop screen. The light illuminated a face that had aged 10 years and 90 days. The flat was very different from his old house in Richmond. The house in Richmond was a spacious 4-bedroom house with a garden, lovingly maintained by his wife Margaret for 15 years. That house was gone now, sold to pay for the divorce costs and legal fees. Margaret had filed for divorce exactly 1 week after the incident went viral. The arrest video had been viewed 47 million times across various platforms. His face had become synonymous with the arrogance of airlines and workplace discrimination. "I can't stay married to that man," Margaret had said in their last conversation, her voice trembling. The man in that video threatening passengers, abusing his authority, saying those horrible things. "I don't know him, or maybe I do, but I didn't want to see him." Morrison tried to explain, to find a logical reason to accuse Olivia Harper of setting him up, but Margaret silenced him. "She didn't set you up, Richard. She bought a ticket and sat in her assigned seat. Everything that happened after that was your choice. You chose to judge her. You chose to humiliate her. You chose to threaten her. Those were your choices." The divorce had been finalized 6 weeks earlier. Margaret got the house, custody of the 2 children, and half of Morrison's pension, the small amount left after legal battles. Morrison's phone rang. Another rejection email, this time from a regional cargo company in Scotland. This was his 43rd application in 3 months. 43 attempts to find work as a pilot. 43 rejections. The aviation industry was small, interconnected, and unforgiving. His commercial pilot's license was technically still valid. The CAA had suspended it for 6 months pending a thorough review, but had refused to revoke it permanently. Yet no airline would hire him. His name was radioactive. He had even applied to flight schools as an instructor, willing to take a significant pay cut to stay in the aviation industry. They all said no. One was brutally honest. "We can't allow someone with your past to teach the next generation of pilots. It sends the wrong message." Morrison closed his laptop and walked to the window. Outside, a Horizon Elite Airways Boeing 777 roared overhead as it began its approach to Heathrow. Watching the plane disappear behind the tall buildings, he felt a physical ache in his chest. 22 years of flying, 22 years of a flawless safety record, on-time departures, smooth landings, all erased by a single decision error involving 1 passenger, 1 flight, 1 catastrophe. But this wasn't just one mistake. Morrison was beginning to understand. It was a pattern, a behavior pattern he had never questioned because the system had never held him accountable. The phone rang. Unknown number. Morrison almost didn't answer, but desperation forced him to pick up. Richard Morrison. That's me. This is David Chen from the Aviation Equality Alliance. We're a non-profit organization that provides training and rehabilitation to aviation professionals involved in discrimination incidents. We'd like to invite you to join our program. Morrison's first instinct was to hang up. The last thing he needed was some kind of diversity seminar when he already knew his career was over, but something compelled him to listen. What kind of program? He asked carefully. A 6-month course. It combines implicit bias training, restorative justice practices, and peer counseling. Participants learn to identify discriminatory patterns in their own behavior and work to make amends to those they've harmed. So what's in it for me? Morrison asked bluntly. There was a silence. To be honest, Mr. Morrison, it probably has no benefit in terms of career rehabilitation. Most airlines still don't hire graduates. However, some of our graduates say the program helped them understand their mistakes and become better people, even if they never fly again. Morrison felt something break inside him. Better people. When had he stopped being a good person? When had power and authority corrupted him so much that he lost his basic humanity? I'll think about it, Morrison said quietly. Don't rush. But Mr. Morrison, the first step to redemption is admitting you need it. After the meeting, Morrison sat silently for a long time. Then he did something he hadn't done since his arrest. He opened the video of the incident and forced himself to watch it. He saw Olivia Harper pointing her finger at his face. This seat is for those who pay for the plane, not for those who work on it, he heard her say. He watched her threaten to have him handcuffed. The man in the video was ugly, cruel, drunk with his authority. Morrison paused the video where his own face appeared, flushed, angry, demanding. Was he really that kind of man? Meanwhile, in London, Kenneth Bradford sat in his lawyer's office, reading the lawsuit filed against him. Harper v. Bradford, a lawsuit alleging conspiracy to violate civil rights laws through discrimination and harassment. They can't sue me, Bradford protested. I'm just a passenger. I didn't do anything. His lawyer, a weary-looking man named Thomas Garrett, took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Mr. Bradford, you knowingly accepted a seat taken from another passenger through discriminatory practices. You knew Captain Morrison removed Dr. Harper from seat 1A to seat you there. Under UK equality law, that makes you an accomplice. Morrison told me it was a system error. There are messages, Mr. Bradford, between you and Morrison. 3 days before the flight, you sent him this message. Can you be sure I can get seat 1A? I know you usually have to move economy-class passengers from their seats to make room for me. Work your magic. Morrison replied, got it. Don't worry about who's sitting in the seat right now. I'll take care of it. Bradford's face fell. How did they get hold of our private messages? Because during the investigation, Morrison's phone was seized by court order. He was in the habit of arranging seats in advance for his friends. You weren't the first, just the most publicized. What do they want? Thomas looked at the document. 500,000 tambages plus a public apology, permanent ban from Horizon Elite Airways, which has already happened, and mandatory participation in anti-discrimination training. £500,000? That's extortion. This is accountability, Thomas corrected. Mr. Bradford, I've reviewed the evidence. You have no defense. My advice is to settle, apologize publicly, and hope this doesn't further damage your professional reputation. It's too late for that. Bradford's real estate company had lost 6 major clients after the video went viral. His partners had voted to remove him from the board. His wife had moved into a guest house and was consulting divorce lawyers. Fine, Bradford said bitterly. Draft the settlement. But I won't apologize on television. The settlement requires you to post a video apology on your personal social media accounts and have it published in The Guardian. There's no room for negotiation on that. Bradford slumped into his chair, defeated. Because he believed someone else deserved his seat. Everything he had built, his reputation, his job, his marriage was crumbling. In New York, Emily Chen stood in front of a conference room filled with 200 Horizon Elite Airways flight attendants, her hands trembling slightly as she held the microphone. 3 months ago, Emily began, her voice steady despite her nerves. I witnessed my captain subject a passenger to discrimination. I wanted to speak up, but I was afraid. I was afraid of losing my job, of retaliation, of being blacklisted. The room was silent. All the flight attendants listened intently. That passenger turned out to be our new CEO, Dr. Olivia Harper. But the point is, it shouldn't have mattered who she was. Billionaire, teacher, or student. She deserved to be treated with respect. We all know that. But fear forced me to stay silent. Emily moved on to the next slide in her presentation. A photo of the new Horizon Elite Training Manual. Dr. Harper implemented the Courage Protocol. This is a new system that allows any crew member to bypass management entirely and report discrimination or safety violations directly to an independent review board. You cannot be fired or retaliated against for using this system. You are protected by your union contract and monitored by external auditors. Hands went up from all over the room. What if the captain still threatens us? Someone asked. Then the captain loses his job, Emily said firmly. Dr. Harper made it clear. We protect crew members who stand up for what's right, and we fire anyone who retaliates. No exceptions. Another hand went up. What happened to you after the incident? Did Morrison try to punish you? Emily smiled. Morrison filed a disciplinary report against me for insubordination. Harper had it removed from my record and promoted me to senior flight attendant. I now manage training to empower the crew. Morrison, meanwhile, will never fly commercially again. The room erupted in applause. After the presentation, an experienced flight attendant approached Emily privately. Her name was Sandra, and she had been flying for 30 years. 5 years ago I had an incident with Morrison, Sandra said quietly. He kicked an elderly black woman out of her seat in first class because his friend wanted the seat. I filed a complaint with Human Resources. They covered it up and punished me by putting me on reserve status for 6 months. After that incident, I learned to keep my head down. I'm sorry to hear what happened to you, Emily said. Don't be. Make sure the new system really works. Make sure people like Morrison can no longer hide behind their authority. I promise, said Emily. That's exactly what we're doing. In Chicago, Olivia sat at Horizon Elite Airways headquarters, reviewing the quarterly reports with the management team. The transformation had been swift and dramatic. Marcus Webb, now officially Chief Advisor and Transformation Director, presented the data. Customer satisfaction scores increased by 42%. Employee engagement increased by 36%. We processed 53 discrimination complaints through the new independent review system, and all were resolved within 30 days. The previous average time was 9 months. How many resulted in termination? Olivia asked. 17 employees were terminated for discriminatory behavior or retaliation. 29 employees underwent mandatory training and were placed on probation. 7 complaints were found to be unfounded. Olivia nodded. What about the financial impact? Revenue increased by 18% on a quarterly basis. We turned a profit for the first time in 3 years. The market responded positively to the cultural change. We are recognized as the most progressive airline in the industry. Being progressive isn't the goal, Olivia corrected. The goal is to adhere to basic human values. We're finally meeting minimum standards. Chief of Operations, former Air Force Colonel Patricia Hayes, spoke up. Dr. Harper, we received 127 applications from pilots who were fired or resigned from other airlines for opposing discrimination. They want to work for us because they know we will protect them. Interview them all, Olivia said. We don't need people with technical skills. We need people with moral courage. After the meeting, Marcus stayed behind. There's something you should know, he said. Richard Morrison has enrolled in the Aviation Equality Association's rehabilitation program. He said he wants to speak with you as part of the restorative justice requirements. Olivia was silent for a moment. What does he want? To apologize. To understand what he did wrong. The program requires participants to meet with the people they harmed, if those people agree. Do I have to meet with him? Absolutely not. You owe him nothing. Olivia thought of the man who had belittled her, threatened her, tried to have her arrested. She thought of the system that had protected him for 22 years. She thought of all the other passengers who had been removed from the plane, rejected, humiliated, passengers who lacked the resources to fight back. Set up the meeting, she said finally. But not for his benefit, for mine. I want to look him in the eye and make sure he fully understands what he's ruined. Marcus nodded. I'll set it up. As Olivia looked out the window of her office at the Chicago skyline, she thought about the journey from seat 38F to this office. She had bought an airline to fix a broken system, but in the process she had learned something important. Real change didn't come from a single dramatic confrontation. It came from the daily persistence of doing better. It came from making sure people like Emily were heard. It came from creating systems where courage was rewarded and oppression was punished. Morrison's downfall had been swift and public. But the real work, building something better, was slow, patient, and persistent, and Olivia Harper was just getting started. 6 months after the incident on flight HE707, Olivia Harper stood in an ordinary conference room in East London, waiting for a meeting she never thought she would attend. The room was empty except for a table, 4 chairs, and a moderator from the Aviation Equality Association. The moderator was a woman named Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, a psychologist specializing in restorative justice in workplace discrimination cases. Dr. Harper, Sarah said gently, I want to remind you that you can leave here at any time. This meeting is entirely voluntary. Richard Morrison has no right to demand your time or your forgiveness. I understand, Olivia said. I didn't come here to forgive him. I came here to make him understand the full weight of what he did. That's a valid reason to participate, Sarah said. Are you ready? Olivia nodded. The door opened, and Richard Morrison entered. He looked like a different man. Gone was the arrogant captain with his impeccable uniform and imposing bearing. This Morrison wore a simple button-down shirt and slacks. His face was pale, his eyes red from lack of sleep. He had lost weight. To Olivia, he looked like a man drained inside. Morrison stopped when he saw her, as if the reality of facing her was more than he had prepared for. "Dr. Harper," he said, his voice just above a whisper. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Olivia didn't respond immediately. She just studied him, this man who had used his authority like a weapon and was now stripped of all his power. Sarah motioned for them to sit down. Morrison sat down in the chair opposite Olivia, his hands clenched tightly in his lap. "Richard," Sarah began, using his first name as protocol dictated, "this is your chance to speak directly to Dr. Harper about what you did. I want you to explain in detail what you did and why it was harmful. Are you ready?" Morrison took a shaky breath. "Dr. Harper, Morrison nodded. He looked at his hands to gather his courage, then forced himself to look Olivia in the eyes. "When you boarded Flight 707 and sat in Seat 1A, I looked at you and made assumptions. I saw a black woman wearing a simple blazer and practical clothes, and I assumed you didn't belong in first class. I assumed you were airline staff who had somehow gained access to a seat you hadn't paid for." He paused for a moment and swallowed with difficulty. "When you showed me your valid boarding pass, I should have apologized and walked away. Instead, I went further. I made up a non-existent policy violation. I removed you from your seat and sent you to the worst seat on the plane, not because of an operational necessity, but because my ego couldn't admit I was wrong." Olivia remained silent and let him continue. "Throughout the flight, I abused my authority. I threatened passengers who asked legitimate security questions. I prioritized my friend's comfort over the medical needs of a diabetic passenger. I intimidated crew members who were trying to do the right thing. And when you stood up to me calmly, reasonably, asking the questions you had a right to ask, I threatened to have you arrested." Morrison's voice trembled. "As a black woman who didn't meet my narrow, racist expectations of who should sit in premium class, I tried to ruin you for sitting in the seat you paid for." The room was silent except for the distant hum of traffic outside. "The worst part," Morrison continued, tears streaming down his face, "this wasn't the first time. I spent the last 6 months in therapy and had to face a truth I had denied for 22 years. I was racist. Not overtly. I never hurled insults or joined hate groups, but I was constantly profiling passengers. I made assumptions based on race, age, and appearance. In my mind, I had created a hierarchy where some people deserved respect and others didn't." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I called it maintaining standards or operational flexibility, but it was discrimination, plain and simple, and the system protected me because I was good at flying planes, as if technical skill could excuse moral bankruptcy." Olivia felt something shift inside her. Not exactly forgiveness, but the realization that Morrison had finally seen what he had done. "You ruined my career," Morrison said. "You took everything from me. My job, my marriage, my reputation, and I don't want any of it back. I don't deserve it. The only thing I want is for you to believe me when I say I understand now. I understand that you weren't just a passenger I inconvenienced. You were a human being who treated me inhumanely. And I'm sorry. I'm deeply, devastatingly sorry." Olivia remained silent for a long time. Then she spoke in a calm but very heavy voice. "Captain Morrison, do you know how many times this has happened to me? Not just on planes but in meeting rooms, hotels, stores. People see my skin color and make assumptions about who I am and what I can do." Morrison shook his head. "I can't even imagine." "You can't imagine it because you've never experienced it. You've traveled the world assuming you belong everywhere. I, on the other hand, have had to prove I belong everywhere. On that plane I paid $5,000 for a seat, showed a valid ticket, and still was told I didn't belong here." She leaned forward slightly. "But you need to understand this. I didn't buy Horizon Elite Airways to punish you. I bought it because your behavior was a symptom of a disease affecting the entire organization. For every passenger you kicked off, there were dozens more subjected to subtle discrimination, ignored, treated suspiciously, made to feel worthless." Morrison nodded and listened carefully. "The reason I'm meeting with you today is not to forgive you or make you feel better about what you did," Olivia continued. "It's to make you understand that your actions have consequences far beyond your own career. Was it flight attendant Emily Chen who stood up to you? Because people like you taught her that speaking up meant professional suicide. She was afraid to do her job properly for years. How many passengers suffered because good people were afraid to help them? Too many," Morrison whispered. "Exactly. So when you ask if I believe you're sorry, my answer is this. I believe you're sorry you got caught. I believe you're sorry you lost everything. What I don't know yet is whether you're sorry enough to truly change not just your behavior but your fundamental understanding of human dignity." Morrison raised his head, his eyes helpless. "What can I do? How can I prove I've changed?" "You can't prove it to me," Olivia said. "I don't need proof. But if you truly want to be better, whether you're given a second chance or not, you have to work at it. You have to educate yourself." When you see discrimination, you have to speak up, even if it costs you something. You must spend the rest of your life ensuring that others don't experience what you did to people. She stood up and signaled the end of the meeting. Your career is over, Captain Morrison. That is the price you will pay. But your life is not over. You can still choose to be a better person. Whether you do that or not is entirely up to you. Morrison stood up too, his legs trembling. Dr. Harper, I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any way I could participate in Horizon Elite's training programs? Not as an employee, but as a cautionary example. Let me tell new pilots what can happen when your decisions are guided by prejudice. Make me an example of what not to be. Olivia considered this. It was an unexpected request. I'll think about it. If, and this is a big if, I allow you to participate, it will be free of charge, training videos will be made, and you will have no authority. You will simply be a voice recounting your failures. I'll do it, Morrison said immediately. Whatever conditions you set, I need to do something to fix this. It can't be fixed, Olivia corrected, but it can be improved. My team will contact you. Morrison left the room with slumped shoulders, but somehow lighter than when he entered. Sarah turned to Olivia. That was very impressive, said Sarah. How do you feel? Olivia suddenly felt exhausted and sat back down. I feel like I've been carrying a very heavy load up a very long hill, and I'm not sure if I've put it down or if I'm still carrying it. Do you think he really changed? I think he's genuinely scared, Olivia said. It's not yet clear whether that fear will turn into lasting change, but I was serious when I said it's his job, not mine. A year after the incident, Olivia took the stage at the International Aviation Safety Summit in Geneva and addressed an audience of 3,000 aviation professionals from around the world. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the Horizon Elite Airways logo and impressive statistics: a 67% increase in customer satisfaction, a 54% increase in employee loyalty, an 89% decrease in discrimination complaints, and profitability at its highest level in 5 years. A year ago, Olivia began, her voice echoing in the quiet hall, I boarded one of my own planes as an ordinary passenger. I was removed from my seat, sent to the back of the plane, and threatened with arrest. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because the captain thought I didn't look like I belonged in first class. She paused for a moment to let the audience digest this. This experience could have resulted in a lawsuit, a settlement, and business as usual. Instead, it became a catalyst for systemic change. Because the problem wasn't just one bad captain. The problem was a culture that protected bad captains. It was a system that valued authority over accountability. It was an industry that discriminated while talking about diversity. Olivia moved to the next slide and showed the new Horizon Elite training framework. We implemented the Courage Protocol. In this system, any employee can report discrimination or safety violations without fear of retaliation. Last year, we processed 287 complaints. We terminated 43 employees for discriminatory behavior. We also promoted 31 employees who showed moral courage in difficult situations. Pilots, flight attendants, managers, regulators. He looked out at the sea of faces before him. Some of you are here because you don't want to be the hero of the next viral video. This is a start, but it's not enough. Real change requires more than fear of consequences. It requires a fundamental commitment to treat every passenger, every employee, every human being with dignity, not because they own the company, but because dignity is a right, not a privilege. Applause began slowly, then turned into a standing ovation. After the speech, dozens of airline executives who wanted to implement similar programs approached Olivia. She spoke with each one and asked the same question: are you doing this because it's right or because it's profitable? The honest ones admitted it was for both. Our shareholders care about responsibility, but our employees care about respect. If we can provide both, we must. Then do it, Olivia told them. Real change is expensive, uncomfortable, and slow, but it's worth it. That evening at her hotel in London, Olivia received an email from Emily Chen. Dr. Harper, I wanted to let you know that I've been accepted into the Horizon Elite Management Training Program. Within 2 years, I'll be eligible to become a base manager. A year ago, I was terrified of losing my job for standing up to Captain Morrison. Now I'm on my way to managing other flight attendants. I also wanted to let you know that Captain Morrison gave his first training session today. He spoke to the new pilots about unconscious bias and the misuse of authority. He was brutally honest about his own failures. Some pilots were uncomfortable, but everyone left understanding what happens when you allow bias to guide your decisions. Thank you for creating an environment where people like me can build a career without compromising our integrity. Thank you for turning the worst flight of my life into a catalyst for change. Sincerely, Emily. Olivia smiled and closed her laptop. She thought about the journey from seat 38F to this moment. A journey that cost a man his career but transformed an entire organization. Had justice been served? Partially. Morrison accepted the consequences, but no punishment could compensate for the harm he had caused countless passengers over 20 years. However, something more important than punishment had occurred. The system that supported him had been dismantled. The culture that protected him had changed. And the next Emily Chen would not have to choose between her job and her conscience. 3 years later, Olivia was invited to testify before the UK Parliament's Transport Committee on Discrimination in Aviation. The committee chair asked, "Dr. Harper, do you believe the aviation industry has fundamentally changed since the HE707 incident?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "Has it changed? Yes. Fundamentally? We're getting there. Horizon Elite has proven that treating people with respect is good for business. Our model has been adopted by 17 other airlines. But change is fragile. It requires constant attention and constant commitment. What would you say to other business leaders facing similar challenges?" I would say that diversity and inclusion are not human resources issues to be solved, but leadership imperatives to be implemented. You cannot delegate treating people with respect. It must start at the top and be reflected in every decision, every policy, and every interaction. After the testimony, Olivia visited the Aviation Museum at Heathrow. A new exhibition had opened there, The Flight That Changed Everything. The exhibition featured a replica of Seat 38F and testimonials from passengers and crew members who experienced discrimination on flights. At the center of the exhibition was a video showing Emily Chen, now a base manager, addressing new employees. In the video, Emily said, "When you wear this uniform, you represent more than just an airline. You represent the idea that everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of race, age, appearance, or ticket class. If you can't commit to that, this job isn't for you." Watching the video, Olivia felt a deep sense of accomplishment. This was the legacy she wanted. Not her own triumph, but a system where respect was guaranteed and triumph was unnecessary. As she left the museum, her phone rang. It was Marcus Webb. "Olivia, I have some interesting news. Morrison has completed his 2nd year with the Aviation Equality Alliance. He's working with them to develop training materials. They want to know if Horizon Elite will sponsor a scholarship fund in his name for pilots from underrepresented groups." "A scholarship in Morrison's name?" Olivia asked, surprised. "He suggested it himself. He wants to fund the training of pilots who appear to be discriminating against passengers. He's donating his entire pension, the remainder of it, to establish the fund." Olivia was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Tell him yes. But on one condition. The scholarship won't be named after him. It will be named after Emily Chen. He can be an anonymous donor. If he's truly changed, he won't need the credit." Marcus laughed. "I'll pass on the message." 5 years later, Olivia stood at the Horizon Elite Training Center in Atlanta, watching new captains take the mandatory Leadership and Respect course. On the screen in front of the room was Richard Morrison, now aged, his hair gray, but with a clarity in his eyes he hadn't had before. "My name is Richard Morrison," said the recorded Morrison. 5 years ago, I was a captain for this airline. I was also a bully who subjected passengers to discrimination because of my own prejudices. I will tell you exactly what I did and what it cost me. Not to win your sympathy, but to ensure you never make the same mistakes." The new captains listened quietly, as Morrison detailed every decision he made on flight. HE707. He didn't downplay anything. He didn't make excuses. He simply laid bare the truth of his moral failure. "I lost my career, my marriage, my reputation," Morrison concluded. "But I wasn't the one who paid the real price. Every passenger I humiliated, every crew member I intimidated, every person who saw my behavior and decided it wasn't worth speaking up, paid the price. That is the cost of discrimination. It doesn't just hurt the target, it poisons the entire system." When the video ended, instructor Emily Chen, now director of training, stepped forward. "Captain Morrison's story is extreme, but the attitudes that led to his behavior are not. Each of you will encounter moments when you hold power over another person. What you do in those moments defines not just your career but your character. Make wise choices." After class, Olivia pulled Emily aside. "You've built something extraordinary here," Olivia said. Emily smiled. "We built this together. You showed me that standing up for what's right doesn't mean sacrificing your career. Sometimes it means building your career. Now I'm teaching that same lesson to others." "Do you think Morrison really changed?" Olivia asked. Emily considered the question. "I think he's trying his best. Whether that's enough is up to his conscience. But I know this. He can't undo the damage he caused. All he can do is try to prevent others from causing the same damage. And if his story ensures that not even a single passenger experiences what you went through, then maybe something good came out of that terrible event." Olivia nodded. This was the closest atonement that could reasonably be expected. 10 years after the crash of Flight EC-707, Olivia Harper stood on the podium at the United Nations Aviation Safety Conference and received an award for transforming industry standards. When I sat down in seat 38F, Olivia told the assembled delegates, I had a choice to make. I could have immediately revealed who I was and ended my humiliation. Instead, I chose to experience the full extent of the system's failures. That choice was painful, but it showed me exactly what needed to change. She looked out at the audience, which included airline CEOs, regulators, and civil rights advocates. 10 years later, the aviation industry is still not perfect. Discrimination still exists, but it's not as widespread as it used to be. And when discrimination does occur, there are systems in place to address it. Systems created by people who refuse to accept that prejudice is the price of air travel. Olivia paused, her voice softening. To everyone in first class or anywhere else who's been told they don't belong, I want you to know this. You belong here. Your dignity is not negotiable. And if anyone tries to take that away from you, more people are ready to stand with you than you might think. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. After the ceremony, Olivia received a handwritten letter. It was from Richard Morrison. Dr. Harper, I will never apologize to you because I don't deserve to. But I want you to know that I think about Flight 707 every day. I think about the fear I saw in your eyes when I threatened you. I think about my arrogance that made me believe my authority was above your humanity. For 10 years I have tried to be a better person. I will spend the rest of my life on the same journey, not because I expect salvation, but because it is the only honorable path left for me. The scholarship fund named after Emily Chen has supported 47 pilots from minority groups so far. That's 47 people who could change the industry, just like you did. That's the only positive outcome of my failures. I hope you are well, I hope Horizon Elite continues to grow, and I hope that one day the aviation industry you envisioned, where every passenger is treated with respect, becomes so normal that people forget it wasn't always that way. With deep regret and respect, Richard Morrison. Do you think Richard Morrison is being sincere in what he wrote, or is there another intention behind it? Olivia folded the letter and put it in her bag. She didn't need Morrison's regret, but she hoped it was sincere for his own good, and for the good of everyone he would interact with for the rest of his life. Because ultimately, this story wasn't about a captain's downfall or a CEO's triumph. This story was about the transformation of a system, the rebuilding of a culture, and ultimately, the acceptance of a simple truth. Honor is not determined by seat assignments, ticket prices, or how someone perceives you. Honor is an inherent right, and anyone who tries to take it away deserves to lose everything.